Hello everyone, so I'm currently working on another video at the moment, but I just got really bored during the editing process, and I've always kind of wanted to do this, and a few people have actually asked me what my political positions are, and specifically where I stand on this test, basically. Now obviously the test isn't ideal, it's not perfect, however it is a bit of fun, and it will help me to explain a few of my political positions. So, without further ado, I suppose let's jump into it. I have a relatively good idea where I'm going to be because I have done the test before, but we'll see. So first of all, if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Obviously, strongly agree. I genuinely can't understand why anyone would put disagree or strongly or anything other than strongly agree for that. Why would you? Oh, I guess if you're an anarcho-capitalist or some kind of fucking idiot. So, an anarcho-capitalist. I'd always support my country whether it's right or wrong. Absolutely not. No. Nationalism is a fucking garbage ideology. It's ridiculous. I have absolutely no loyalty to my country specifically just because I was born here. That sort of thing is quite simply just not important to me at all. And so that sort of answers the next question. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Absolutely, yes. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Strongly disagree. Again, the only reason you'd agree with that is if you believe that your race is superior to others, which makes you a fucking racist, basically. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. No. I mean, don't get me wrong. I completely agree that we should work together, and left unity is of course very important, which is why I'd be more than willing to work with Marxist-Leninists or liberals to achieve certain goals. However, that doesn't mean that I think that they're my friend or that I agree with them fully on everything, or that I'm not willing to criticise them or turn on them if necessary. Allies are not necessarily comrades. I mean, I'm sure Ben Shapiro would probably be closer to my politics than, I don't know, like a fucking neo-Nazi, being a Jewish guy, but that doesn't mean that I agree with him or that I consider him a comrade. It just means that if it comes down to literal Nazism, we have a common interest. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. I think there's some nuance to that, because depending on what the international law specifically is, it could be justified. I'm going to say I strongly disagree. Just because most of the time when people talk about international law, what they actually mean is human rights laws and not, like, I don't know, fucking trade agreements or agricultural law or anything like that. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I don't think so. I'm not entirely sure why that would be a bad thing. I mean, I don't know, maybe I do have a vested interest because I think I am a fusion of entertainment and information, but I mean, a fusion of information and entertainment, that's like Sesame Street, isn't it? No, absolutely not. Okay. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Yes. No. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why it took me so long to get that. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm by no means a class reductionist, as my recent tiffs with Kelly Zahos and more recently Angie Speaks go to show. However, as I've mentioned, I have absolutely no connection to my nationality or my country or anything like that, so I would say that I have much more in common with a working class person in India, for example, as opposed to a more middle or upper class person in England. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I don't really have an opinion on this. It's not really interesting to me, to be honest with you. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I mean, this is some kind of fucking nerd shit right here. I actually don't know much about economics, to be perfectly honest with you. At least not the specifics of it. I mean, I guess you don't want to get into a Zimbabwe situation, do you? But equally, you don't want mass unemployment. I don't know. I'm going to say agree? Because there's no neutral option, really. And quite frankly, my ideal situation would be one in which neither inflation nor employment would be a factor, because work wouldn't be so controlled and heavily pushed and treated as an essential part of life that you must spend 8 hours of your day constantly at work. And likewise, I want to have an end goal of fully automated luxury gay-space communism, which does mean a classless, stateless, moneyless society, and of course inflation and unemployment would no longer be factors within that paradigm. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Absolutely, yes. Yes. I don't know why you would disagree with that. I mean, what's that statistic that like 70% of climate change and carbon emissions are due to just 100 companies or something like that? No, absolutely not. There is absolutely no incentive for companies and corporations to bother to curb or curtail their particular excesses or whatever contributions towards climate change it is that they participate in. So no, absolutely regulate them. Regulate them and then abolish them. Regulate them and then nationalise them, and then corporatize them, and then seize them. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need, is a fundamentally good idea. Yes, strongly agree. The free of the market, the free of the people. Oh, absolutely not. Like, I'm going to make a video in the same vein as my one about centrists, about anarcho-capitalists, because their ideology is apparently popular enough for it to have gone viral online, and yet somehow is just so unbelievably stupid, unbelievably and just contradictory, I suppose is the word I'd use to describe it, because they don't seem to understand that capitalism is a hierarchy, and corporations have absolutely no incentive to work towards the greater good. The only thing that forces them to even fucking pay their taxes is regulation, and even that doesn't really work half the time. Absolutely not. No, the free market only benefits the rich. I know I'll probably get a few liberals commenting on this, getting really pissed off, but fuck them. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. Yes, I agree, and I would go further and say that I think it's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water you have to pay for in the first place. Like, I mean, that comes out the tap, I mean. Like, why is there such a thing as a water bill? I just find that disgusting, but then again, I am very much in favour of nationalising and making a public utility out of all the bills, really. So, housing, water, electricity, Wi-Fi, you know, all that shit. All the shit you need to survive, basically. Food, as well. Absolutely, that's an important one. I don't think that those things should be things that you have to pay for. In no way, shape or form is that acceptable, in my mind. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Yeah, absolutely agree. Well, I made a video about it ages ago. See, the thing is, I've now made enough videos that I'm quite happy about this, that now most of the time when I talk about basic concepts to do with leftist ideas, I can mostly point to them and say, oh, I've made a video about that a year ago or whatever. So I did make a video about abolishing landlords, nationalising housing, and so on and so forth. I absolutely do not believe the land should be a commodity. It makes absolutely no sense to me why anyone should be able to lay claim to just a patch of land just because they have money. Absolutely not. Definitely not. It's regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to society. Strongly agree. I'm a leftist. Yes. There's not much more to say about that. I've made a video about billionaires. If you really want to watch that, you can. It's about half an hour long. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Okay, so now I'm going to do a thing that I do quite a lot when I'm making videos or doing a response, which is this. Oh, so, again, this is fucking nerd shit. I don't care. No. No, I believe in globalization, so no. disagree, I guess. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Oh, I can only imagine the sort of people that put strongly agree to that. Fuck off. Like, what kind of fucking scumbag do you have to be? Seriously. The only social responsibility should be to deliver a profit. Like, who agrees with that? Who says, yeah, you know what? Amazon, for example, shouldn't have to fucking pay taxes or contribute in any positive way to the world, or try and fix any of the problems that it caused, or use any of its resources to try and divert the oncoming climate catastrophe. No, their only responsibility is to hoard gold like a greedy, evil, hungry dragon. Like, it's just absurd to me. The rich are too highly taxed. Strongly disagree. Not taxed enough. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Absolutely not. Medical care should be completely, absolutely free. I'm so glad that in the UK we don't have an American-style system, although Boris Johnson apparently wants to give us one. And I'm, frankly, pissed off about the fact that you have to pay anything for anything to do with healthcare. I think that's unacceptable. I think it's unacceptable that I have to pay, what is it now, like a tenner for my medication now? And I hate that I have to pay 20 quid, I think, for a dental checkup. Like, I know that to Americans or people in other countries that will seem ridiculous, but I feel like on principle, absolutely nothing should be private or should be paid for in a healthcare system. That's how strongly I feel about it. Government should penalise businesses that mislead the public. Strongly agree. Yes, I also think that governments who mislead the public, like, for example, Boris Johnson and the Conservatives in the Leave campaign, should be penalised for misleading the public. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. I mean, I guess I strongly agree, but again, I don't like the idea of a free market in general. Abortion when a woman's life is not threatened should always be illegal. No. Wait, hang on. Yeah. No. Sorry, I misread that for a second. Should always be illegal. No, fuck off. Absolutely fuck off. I'm not going to go into all the abortion arguments, but quite frankly, just actually piss off. What makes you think you have the right to dictate what a woman does with her body? I don't give a shit about a fucking clump of cells. I jizz a clump of cells into an old sock every now and again. That's how it should be seen. All authority should be questioned. Yes. Yeah, strongly agree. I'm totally against authority, especially unjust authority, which is most authority. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. No. See, this is an interesting concept, especially within left-wing circles, because there's this idea that the revolution, if or when it does happen, which will probably not be for a very long time, possibly not even in my lifetime, there's this idea that it should be about revenge and that we should find the rich, hunt them down, kill them, take all this stuff. And, like, I see where people are coming from and that might be necessary, but I don't think that's the right way to go about it, and I don't think that people should be enjoying thinking about it, and I certainly don't think that it should be something that we look forward to doing, or that it should be really considered acceptable to LARP about killing Jeff Bezos or whatever. No. I admit there may be a possibility that if it does come to a violent revolution, there may be a situation in which we're forced to become violent and to use violence for political ends, but I don't think that should be our first resort, and I certainly don't think that it's acceptable to act like that's definitely what it's going to be like. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theatres or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Strongly disagree. History is important, so are the arts. I don't think that there's really anything more I can say about that, especially considering that the main people who are saying shit like, oh, you know, art galleries, museums, libraries, if they can't function on a commercial level, they should be closed. Like, they're the same people who are saying, why are you vandalising this statue? Because we fucking paid for it, mate. Most statues, especially the ones that are being torn down, were funded by the taxpayer. And if some of those taxpayers are black, for example, and the statue is a slave owner or slave trader, then absolutely, they should be torn down. Statues do not provide knowledge or education or historical context in the way that a museum or a library, or even a theatre, depending on what's playing there, does. And I think that we should acknowledge that and fund more libraries and more museums instead of statues. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. No, I disagree with that. Oh, sorry, I'm going to have to close the window. Hang on a sec. Sorry about that, I'm back now. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Oh, I accidentally clicked this one. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. No, I disagree. Or do I disagree? I don't know, that's an interesting one. Because on the one hand, I do completely get the argument that obviously parents should be able to do what they like with their kids, and if they want to educate them themselves, then that should be something they're able to legally explore. But a lot of the time, these homeschooled kids are not being given a proper education, and equally, it's often an incredibly ideologically slanted education. However, on the other hand, there is the difficulty of the fact that a public education system can be used to manipulate a population. So at the moment, for example, I've made a couple of videos about this, but at the moment, the British education system is mostly used to prop up this idea of the empire and the great British nation and our glorious history without really going into any of our just horrendous actions throughout the past. So I think it's a double-edged sword. Plus, in my ideal society, schools would be able to provide, for example, free meals and free aftercare and all that sort of thing. And let's be honest here, one of the major purposes of school is to allow parents to re-enter the workforce after a few years. And quite frankly, I don't give a shit about that. If you want to stay home and look after your kid full time, go for it. I don't know. Again, it's one with a bit of nuance. All people have their rights, but it's better for us all that different sorts of people should keep to their own kinds. Yeah, well, I'm glad I accidentally clicked that. Strongly disagree. Fuck that. No, I think one of the most interesting parts of life is meeting different people and learning about them and their different cultures. I think one of the many things that I loved about my past relationship was the fact that my ex was from a completely different culture, and through her I was able to learn so much about that, and it was just a much more interesting experience for both of us because we learned from each other. And I think that's true with all people. Like, a lot of my closest friends are from different cultures, and I think it's really sad that people would prefer to stick with their own because, whilst I have nothing against British people, and I have a lot of British friends. I think that to reduce it to that and say that that's the only sort of people you'll hang out with, or that you should keep to your own, I think that's very sad and very insular, and it can lead to difficulties as well, because obviously if there's any kind of animosity, the best way to combat ignorance, I've always found, is to meet someone of the group that you're ignorant about. There's that old thing, people being homophobic until they met a gay guy or whatever. And I think that's definitely true. I think it's especially true with the trans thing at the moment, because there's not many trans people as, for example, gay people. I think it's a lot more difficult for people to really get, because a lot of people won't necessarily know a trans person, but they almost certainly will know a gay person, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but 1 in 10 people are LGBT, but only 1 in 100 people are trans. And I think being more open about things did really help with the gay marriage thing, because if 1 in 10 of your acquaintances, or even your family, was likely to be impacted by legislation like this, it makes it more personal, Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Strongly disagree. Don't hit your kids. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Yes, strongly agree. That's just the natural part of growing up. Pros- Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offence. Strongly agree. Yeah, absolutely. Keep the ganja. I'm not going to try and do it, but like marijuana or cannabis, as it's known here, is pretty harmless. It's much less harmful than fucking alcohol. And honestly, if you've been to Britain, you know how much damage alcohol does to British people. I think it's fine. I think all drugs should be legal, to be honest. We might get into that later on. I can't really remember the questions here, but with marijuana especially, I think it should be perfectly legal. You should just be able to buy it at a shop. I know that is sort of the case in some places in the US. It's not the case here. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Absolutely not. No. That's a prime capitalist invention, really. The primary function of schooling should be to get education, to learn about the world, to improve and enrich your life, not to equip yourself to find a job. And if it was to do that, why do they fucking teach algebra? Because like 99% of people are never going to use fucking algebra. No, life should not be about work. Absolutely not, no. And furthermore, work should not be necessary in order to live a decent life. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Strongly disagree. That's eugenics. We're against that. There are no savage and civilized people, there are only different cultures. Strongly agree. Who the fuck disagrees with that? Fuck me. Okay, well, I guess if you agree with that, you're pretty much just a fucking Nazi. That's a joke. But seriously, come on now. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Strongly disagree. I've said it a few times now, but life should not be about work. It should be about enriching yourself and making the world a better place. Work shouldn't be necessary for that, especially not work under our current model. I think most people would work in a post-capitalist society because I think the lockdown has taught us that not working, that staying at home, that doing fuck all the time is shit. It's really shit. It's boring, it's frustrating. People need something to do. Our brains will not allow us to not do anything. So I think people would still work. However, I don't think that they should be forced to in order to live a decent life or expect society support. See, that could mean any number of things, but I think in general the answer is no. I think everyone should receive and be able to expect society support, whether or not they work, and especially whether or not they make money for some capitalist. Like honestly, right now, I work in insurance. I provide as much, if not less, to society than any given homeless person or unemployed person or whatever. Like, all I'm doing is making money for a multi-billion-dollar insurance company. Like, don't sit there and fucking pretend that work is the same as contribution to society. When you're troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. No. I disagree. I'm not entirely sure what this is going to tell me about my fucking political leanings, but to be honest with you, I think this is the sort of thing that in the long term does damage you. I do this, but not in quite as healthy a way as it is here. So when you're troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. I don't keep busy with more cheerful things, but basically keeping busy with more cheerful things is essentially like saying fill the void or avoid dealing with the issue. And I think that whilst it's important not to wallow in misery or the issue or whatever, it's equally important, if not more important, to deal with it head on, to actually accept it. So this happened with me. So again, I've mentioned I have a love addiction, sex addiction thing. It means that when I get into a relationship, it becomes my life. It consumes me, and when it ends, that means that it feels like my life is over and I have nothing left to live for. So what I have been doing is not thinking about it, is trying to move on with disastrous results. So now what I'm doing, with the help of therapy, is I'm forcing myself to deal with those feelings, allowing myself to feel the sadness, the grief, I suppose. And I think that that's the most healthy thing to do. Absolutely, I would say, do not keep yourself busy. If you have serious issues, deal with the serious issues, because they'll only build up and get significantly worse. First generation immigrants will never be fully integrated within the new country. Strongly disagree. Anyone can be integrated within a new country. I think, as the Windrush generation showed us in the UK. And also, quite frankly, I don't know what being integrated within a country even means, because a cultural identity can change so much over so short a period of time. But in general, I have to say, yeah, I have to say no. Absolutely, that they can definitely be fully integrated within the new country. Definitely, absolutely. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Jesus Christ, no! Are you not aware of recent history? Of all of history? What the fuck? Are you not aware of the East India Company? Are you not aware of the Colombian death squads? Are you not aware of all of Nestlé's dealings? What? See, I'm assuming that all of us means all the people in the world. But capitalism, I would say, is a net negative in the world. Because capitalism allows rampant poverty to exist. It allows millions of easily avoidable deaths to take place. And why does this happen? Because of what's good for the most successful corporations. We could feed everyone on Earth. We could house all the homeless. We could end medical shortages. All the stuff that, for example, Bill Gates pretends to care about. We could do all of that stuff. But the reason that we don't, or that we can't, is because all of the money and resources we need to do that is held by the most successful corporations, and those with the most power have absolutely no intention of making things better, or materially improving the lives of poor people or people in the third world. If they did, they wouldn't force them to dig for their diamonds. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. Again, this is an interesting one that I'm not entirely certain how I feel about it. Public broadcasting can very easily slip into essentially just becoming the media or propaganda wing of the ruling party, which the BBC has sort of started to do, and Russia Today and Al Jazeera have been accused of being in the past. So I'd say on a moral level, I would probably agree with that. The issue is that without a public broadcaster, all the programming is basically just shit, essentially, because it's not made for artistic merit or because it would be beneficial for people to see. It's made to make money and to draw in advertisers, which is how the History Channel, for example, in the US became what it is today. But in the end, I think it is more important to have a non-government controlled media, essentially. Oh, sorry, forgot to do this one. The most important thing for children is to learn to accept discipline. Strongly disagree. Most important thing for children is to be happy. You know, I mean, discipline, maybe it's important. I don't have kids, so I don't really have many opinions about child rearing, but that seems best for me. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counter-terrorism. Yes, I would agree with that. I think especially the Snoopers Charter. I think Theresa May did actually say a few years ago in an interview, or in a speech rather, that currently we have too many civil liberties, and that if our laws won't allow us to charge terrorist suspects without any kind of proof, then the Conservative Party will change the laws so that we can, which I think is pretty fucked up. And obviously the US has the Patriot Act and all that shit. So absolutely, yeah, I would strongly agree with that. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. I mean, I guess so. But, like, what? This is a bit like saying, oh, well, you know, the Nazis, they did really good at building those roads. Like, okay, yeah, and Volkswagen or whatever, but they also did a lot of other stuff. This is really weird to me. Like, I mean, I guess you get a lot of stuff done, but a lot of that stuff is bad. So I guess I agree, but like, I don't know. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Strongly disagree. Look, the government spying on you is not good, and it only takes a certain amount of imagination to see exactly how anyone could be considered an enemy of the state or wrongdoer. You know, not too long ago, it was almost made illegal in the UK for porn to be produced that mostly centred around female pleasure, like squirting and shit. The government could technically have used the powers of the Snoopers Charter to spy on and find people who are looking at the wrong sort of porn. The wrong sort of porn in this case being women enjoying themselves. Equally, if you're any kind of political extremist or anything like that, technically I suppose I could be considered an enemy of the state because I don't like the idea of a state, just like my ANCAP friends who, I don't have any ANCAP friends because I don't agree with paedophilia, but just like ANCAPs, I agree with complete abolition of the government. I'm fully in support of Antifa and political violence if necessary. So I would be considered an enemy of the state, potentially. And, you know, the fact that currently we have a conservative but, you know, not fascist government in power doesn't mean that it'll always be that way. It doesn't mean that what we have now is the worst we'll ever have. You know, if things get worse, if in, I don't know, 2030, Britain goes full fash, the powers that were granted now will then be used and more easily accessed and accepted by that regime because they'll have been around for ages and people will just accept, oh, well, you know, the Conservatives did it in 2020. Like, yeah. But the Conservatives weren't doing it to find, I don't know, the Jews, for example. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. Strongly disagree. Absolutely not. I believe in restorative justice, in rehabilitative justice. I don't believe in retribution. I don't think it's the way forward. I think it's viscerally more satisfying. I think it makes sense to feel that that's the best way, but it's not. Statistically, it's not, and I think morally, most people, if they think about it from a less emotionally charged angle, would agree that that's not the right way to go. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. Strongly disagree. Fuck the government. Fuck the police. Fuck authority. No gods, no masters. All the anarchist slogans. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Strongly disagree. Art is what you make of it. Art is not art is not objective. Art is subjective. Anything that anyone creates is considered art and can be considered a masterpiece by some and a piece of shit by others. You know, I could say the Mona Lisa, her eyes are too far apart and it looks amateurish, and I could find much better shit on DeviantArt or whatever. Now, a lot of people would disagree with that, but the fact that I feel that way doesn't mean that I'm right, but equally it doesn't mean that I'm wrong, because art is subjective. And also, all art is political, and all art represents something when you really think about it. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. We've just been over this, yes. It's a waste of time to try and rehabilitate some criminals. No, I strongly disagree. I think that some criminals won't be rehabilitated. But I don't think it's a waste of time to try. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Strongly disagree. I hate people who say that. Quite frankly, the business person is worthless. I don't respect the idea of someone being a business person, whatever the fuck that means. I assume it means the boss. No, absolutely not. I don't believe that they are worthy of being considered more important. I think artists and writers are incredibly important. Again, especially during lockdown, when all we've got to do is consume art, to watch Netflix, to read books, to watch YouTube videos made by incredibly handsome, if a bit chubby men. The business person I have absolutely no respect for. The manufacturer depends what that means. So if you mean the factory worker, I would say they're as important, if not potentially more, but I don't really want to rank them. I think they are important, absolutely. If you mean the person who owns the company, then again, that person's a business person and they can fuck off. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Strongly disagree. No, homemaking, fuck that. I think, look, the way I always look at it is, if conservatives really, really want women to be homemakers, they should increase salaries to double what they are now, so that the average family can afford to have only one person at work at one time. Otherwise, they can fuck off, because if they're not willing to double the minimum wage, then mothers are going to be forced to work. And also, I believe that homemaking and raising children and whatever should be between the couple, or the polycule, I guess, if that's the setup. It shouldn't be an enforced thing. It shouldn't be something that's an expectation. It should be, like, for example, if I had a kid and I was with the kid's mother or partner or whatever, we'd discuss it, and probably I'd be the one that ends up staying home and looking after the kid, because due to my disability, I'm constantly in and out of work and it's not as reliable. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the planet, genetic resources. Strongly agree. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Absolutely not. Fuck off. No. This is the sort of thing that leads to authoritarianism. No, don't question the establishment. No, fuck you. Astrology accurately represents many things. Strongly disagree. If you believe that, you're a fucking moron. You cannot be moral without being religious. Again, strongly disagree. I'm not religious and I'm highly moral. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the generally disadvantaged. Strongly disagree. Charity has its place. But let's be honest here, billionaires and the people with the power to actually change the world don't give anywhere near enough to charity to actually make a significant dent in any of the world's problems, and only actually donate to charity to stop the mob deciding that actually maybe we should take their money and use it for good, and also, of course, to offset taxes. Some people are naturally unlucky. There's no such thing as natural luck, so no. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Strongly disagree. I think you can be religious if you want, but absolutely don't drill it into children or whatever. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Strongly disagree. Sex outside marriage is fucking radical. A same-sex couple in a stable relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Strongly agree. Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone should be excluded from the possibility of child adoption, assuming that they're, reliable and that they're not some kind of abuser. Basically, if someone passes a background check and if people believe that they're likely to be able to give a child a decent life, then they shouldn't be excluded from that. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be illegal for the adult population, yes. But I believe that the porn industry needs to be more highly regulated. I think that it's incredibly manipulative and abusive at the moment. I think that's partly due to societal bias. I think the Mia Khalifa stuff at the moment is just showing that the way society treats sex workers is despicable and causes significant damage to those sex workers. I do think it should be legal, but I do think that there should be more regulation, and I think that the companies making it should be highly scrutinized, and the people working on them should be highly scrutinized. There definitely needs to be some kind of porn Me Too movement, I would say. And I think that porn stars and porn actors and all that shit, all those people should be unionized. I think that's really important, that they should be able to fight for their own rights, basically. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Yes, obviously. No one can feel naturally homosexual. What does that even mean? No one can feel naturally homosexual. How do you feel homosexual? I don't feel naturally pansexual. I just sometimes like dudes, and I sometimes like girls, and I sometimes like everyone in between. No one can feel naturally homosexual. I mean, I guess what it's saying is homosexuality a choice? That's what I guess it's saying. I'm going to say strongly disagree, because I don't think sexuality is a choice. But if that's not what it means, then I guess I fucked up this question. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Strongly disagree. I think we're not open enough about sex. I think we need to be able to talk about it more. I do have quite a liberal, open group of friends, and I am able to talk about sex with them, and I have slept with a few of my friends as well. But I think that it's very important that we're able to talk about sex and sexuality and sexual issues. I absolutely think that it would be a positive thing for us to be able to do that. I don't think that it's gone too far, because I don't think it's gone far enough. I think it's important to be able to talk more about sex, and it's got to the point now where honestly people are complaining about people talking about sexual assault and things like that, and when it comes to movies and stuff, we're more than happy to show violence, horrendous amounts of torture and all sorts of shit, but we can't have consensual, happy, mutually enjoyable sex in movies and TV shows in the same way that we can have violence. We can have it, but it then cranks up the rating, and in some cases it makes it porn, apparently. Like, George R. R. Martin is a bit of a character, so I wouldn't usually quote him, but he did have a great quote about criticisms of his books where he describes sex, and he basically says that more pleasure comes from a penis entering a vagina than an axe entering a skull, but no one seems to really care about the descriptions of violence in his books. Now, I do have a lot of criticisms of George R. R. Martin. One of them, obviously, is the incredible amount of gratuitous sexual violence that takes place in those books. The other is that he'll just fucking never finish them, and the ending to the story that we'll get will be the shit one from the TV show, and that'll be disappointing. But I think he does make a good point there, and I think we should be able to talk more openly and to celebrate and to express ourselves sexually without having to feel judged. And I think the first step towards that is being able to be open about it and to talk about it more. Okay, so that's it. I'm not sure if this will be made into a video because it's been going on for a while, but let's see where I stand. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm actually much less libertarian left than I was last time. Last time, I think I was like -9, -9. I'm not sure what I did differently on this occasion, but yeah, there you are. -7.5, -8.31. It's interesting that it does seem to change every time I do it, but I'm just going to save that. Brilliant. Okay, so yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm not sure why I did it. I think I was just bored. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was informative for all the people who did repeatedly say, or who did repeatedly ask me what my political positions were on a number of issues. I hope that does straighten things out for you. I am aware that it's not perfect and that there are a lot of criticisms to be had of it, but I do think it was interesting. I think it's interesting, and I think it was just a fun little thought experiment, really. So thanks for listening, I guess.